right, well,
All
thanks,
right.
Mike, for having us, and thank you, class, for taking time to listen to us. So yeah, like Mike mentioned, I'm the CEO and co-founder of XpertVR, so I'll talk to like some of the business side, and might be interesting if any of you guys are looking to go out on like the freelancing contractor or starting your own studio side of things. And then Josh is going to talk more about the developer side of things. So I'll give him more time to talk, but open for any questions at the end of the presentation too. So yeah.
All right.
So,
Do you want to talk about the little slogan here?
yeah, I guess yeah. So yeah, Expert VR's company. Our slogan, our tagline is "Where seeing may be believing, but experiencing is understanding." So over the years, as we all kind of consume videos and social media and TV and everything, obviously we're like seeing that and it's interesting, but we're not really able to experience those mediums and really understand the content that's behind it. So that's where we kind of see VR and augmented reality and all of these extended realities technologies kind of influencing the world. So really experiencing the content that you're consuming. So yeah, there's Josh and myself. Yeah, already did an introduction. I don't think there's too much more to talk about here. So yeah, what we do at Expert VR. So as we says here, Expert VR designs data-driven XR experiences for research and training. So here you can see one of our consumer behavior research environments at the top. It's a convenience store where we track people's eyes and motions they take through the store, what products they pick up, asking them survey data. And so we can better understand how to place objects inside of stores, what labels they should have, things like that. But then we also do a lot of academic research. So as you can see here, this is our high sea simulation. So we created a utopian and dystopian future of what ocean life may look like in 2050, and then put over 300 people through these simulations and gauged whether going through the utopian or the dystopian changed their perception about future laws being put into place um, to stop overfishing or to stop other things affecting ocean life. Um, so two different examples of ways that we're using research we're using reality for research, as well as we create a lot of training simulations as well to train people to work safely or to um, just have a better work environment in general. Yeah, these are just a few of the companies we've worked with. We've done a little bit of everything in the virtual reality, augmented reality space. Um, so all of them were kind of different projects. Yeah, just to give you kind of examples, and if you wanted to ask any questions later, feel free to ask about any of them. But yeah, one of the main things Mike thought we should talk about is just skills we look for when we're hiring. So on the just broader side of things, we're looking for people that are passionate about virtual reality and newer technology and excited to work in the space. Having a designer mind or designer focus we found is really helpful as well. People that aren't just specifically in programming or specifically in art or business, but kind of try to look at everything and um, try to design experiences um, that people are going to like, and not just focusing on their one specialty. Hunger to learn. All of us have like graduated from university or college, but are always still learning at work and afterward about all kinds of different aspects of the virtual reality augmented world and just other things that we're interested in. We'd love to see that when we're hiring people as well, to want to continuously learn about the new technologies coming out, and just things they're interested in. It kind of goes back to the passionate side of things. And then obviously being team oriented. We have a team, and working in a studio, everybody has to work together and communicate properly to make sure that we're delivering the product on time and to the way that our clients are looking for them, or that our team is looking for an end goal to get to. So making sure that everybody's team oriented and can work together. And then I'll pass it off to Josh to talk about the technical skills.
Yeah. So obviously, with the technical skills, it's going to be largely based off what we look for and what we're using. So what we at XpertVR use for, at least for engines, is we use Unity and Unreal. So when we're, looking to hire, we definitely look for people that have experience in either of those. If you have both, that's even better. Programming experience, obviously, like if you are trying to be, a programmer for VR, we like to see, C Sharp, C++, Java, that stuff like that. Specifically for Unity and Unreal, right? Unity uses C Sharp, Unreal uses C++. You can also get away with blueprint programming, the visual scripting. But yeah, seeing that is very important to us. Additionally, Blender knowledge. Blender is the 3D modeling software that we personally use. And then also, if you guys are, looking for any sort of job in this industry, having a portfolio, regardless of if you're a programmer or an artist, is very important. If you've worked in projects in VR, it's going to look good, especially if you're the programmer, right? VR stuff is always cool to look at, to be inside. So if you have, even if you could bring an Oculus Quest, for example, if you have that to your interview, people will love to see that, be in the space that you've created. So yeah, always try to have a portfolio or something to show like that.
Yeah,
And
and
I'll hand it
just
back
before I
over
go to the
to
gotchas,
Amir.
yeah, just before I go to the gotchas, portfolio is definitely the most important thing. I hardly look at a resume, or I guess I'll read over a good resume letter, but a reference letter. But portfolio is definitely the number one thing to show that you've actually done what you've talked about. And Josh, after his interview, he even sent us a game that he made so we could try it out and play it. So having that kind of option available, if you have an executable file of a game that you've built or been part of building, and especially just the portfolio of videos and pictures, is number one when you're trying to get hired. So yeah, a couple gotchas here. Go through pretty quickly, but write stuff down. This comes down to two main things. First, when you're meeting with clients, write down every bit of the conversation that you're having with the client, whether it's what you're saying, what the client's saying, or your teammates are saying. Because when you go back and have brainstorming sessions, you're going to forget about things that were talked about. So making sure that you have all that written down, so that you can create what your client was looking for, as well as just writing stuff down on contracts. We've had some issues in the past where whether we're working with a client and we didn't clearly write down exactly what the expectations were, or same with working with hiring somebody, or hiring somebody as a contract, just making sure that everything's written down so that you're all on the same page, and make sure there's no headaches in the future. And that goes right along with vetting your partners when you're looking to work with somebody as a business partner, as a client, as a hiring somebody, a contractor, whatever it is, making sure that you've looked into them a little bit and what they've done in the past, as well as maybe talking to some references. Make sure that you know the person that you're working with, especially if it's an employee or a business partner that you're going to be working with for hopefully many years to come. Investing in good equipment. There's been many times where we've bought cheaper equipment because we got to save a few $100s at one point, but then we usually find that 6 months, a year later, we need to upgrade that equipment anyways. So if you can spare the extra couple $100s to get a little better equipment so that you don't have to upgrade every year, definitely recommend that. And then just having a good work-life balance. We've found that especially on the business side, a couple of years ago, we're putting in 12-hour or more days for weeks in a row. And although you get a lot of work done quickly, really quickly your productivity dies down. And so making sure that you're having fun at work, and then being able to go home and have fun at what other things that you like to do as well. Then don't undervalue yourself. So this directly contradicts the next point. But when you're going to clients and going to people, make sure that you're the value that you're providing them, not just the price tag, but through using your training application. Let's say you build a training application, how much money are they now saving, not having to pay somebody to train their new employees? Or if this is a really cool game that you made for a client that they're now going to get a bunch of press coverage on and get a lot of people in there that are excited to try it out. What's that value to them? So knowing that value when you're giving them a price, but then, like I said, directly contradicting that, be open to free work. And when we first started out, obviously we didn't really have any experience in the space and didn't have anything to show. So being open to taking on some free work, try to do it strategically. So making sure that you're working with companies that are going to give you some brand recognition and use some recognition, but being open to that free work, because those first few free contracts that you take on will allow you to show to other clients what you've done in the past and how you can help them. And then lastly, especially once you get a couple of years into it, try and find a focus in something you can specialize in. So for XpertVR, we did a little bit of everything in the virtual reality, augmented reality space. But over the past 2 years, we've really focused in on research and training and the data behind that. So finding that focus, it not only helps you when you're coming up with ideas, but whenever you're talking to somebody, you can tell them, we do VR research and training applications. And then they can automatically take that idea and apply it to their business and be like, hey, where do we need help in that space? Whereas if you don't have that focus, you kind of just go and you say, hey, we do VR, we can do anything for you, because we basically can in VR. And then they just have way too many ideas that they can't find a problem for you to solve. So having that focus helps a lot there. Now I'll pass it back to Josh for the development pipeline.
All right, so along with the programming that I do at XpertVR, I also do a lot of the project management side of things. So I handle a lot of the development pipeline here. And while I'm talking about this, I'm going to be talking about some pretty high level, I'm going to give some pretty high level definitions on things that are pretty important. So if you have any questions about those, just let me know later down the line. All right, so basically the first step of our development pipeline is pre-production. Basically all of our projects have gone through this pipeline. And obviously the first step here is the proposal. So on Evan's side of things, basically he goes and he finds contracts from clients. Right? We're a very client-oriented company, and we find these clients that want something done in VR, and this proposal is basically how we show them, this is what we can do in VR for you. Right? This is the things that we can do, but it's all very high level, right? It's like, oh yeah, we can put you in the space, you can pick things up, you can do, basically, we outline very, very basic design mechanics. And out of the many proposals that we do, sometimes they come back and we get a contract, right? So once we get that contract, we move on to the rest of the steps, which is creating a design document. So basically, that's when we get into very low-level definitions of what we're doing. Take every single mechanic, everything that they're going to be doing in the simulation, and we define very clearly what's going to happen. So when people are programming it or making art for it, it's very clear. They don't have to ask too many questions. We also find a lot of the reference art. We don't actually have a 2D artist or anything at our company, so we tend to find a lot of reference art to make all of our 3D models. Additionally, we make a white box build. So if you guys don't know what a white box build is, essentially we create a small level with just boxes, no impressive art or anything, just boxes, and we put ourselves in that to see if the scale of that level that we've created feels right. You'll notice very quickly, oh, you know what, this being here is not great because it kind of distorts the vision for here, you know what I mean? It's easier to figure out where your problems are if you're in the space. And then lastly, once we have all that stuff figured out, I work on the project management exactly. I figure out what's a priority, what do we do first, and I lay out the entire production side. So once we get into production, we basically work in our own branches. So the artists have their own branch, programmers have their own branch, and essentially what a branch is if you're working on a project with a large team, what a branch is basically you have that project folder where everything is. You duplicate that folder, and you have an extra version of that project. So if you make any changes and you screw up that project, you're not going to ruin it for everybody, right? So that's all a branch is, making sure that people are working in their branches, that are working in their branches the right way, because it's very easy to screw that up as well. On top of that, maintaining schedules, making sure that once you have that project management stuff all set up, all your schedules, all like this task needs to be done this day, this task needs to be done this day. Make sure those are getting done by those days, like you guys are meeting your deadline, stuff like that, right? Because if you don't, you can't finish the project for whatever reason, it just looks bad on you guys, right? On the company. So that's making sure that those are actually getting done is very important. Thirdly, during production, making frequent builds. This is something that I need to get better at, but basically, if you're not making your builds, if you're not testing thoroughly throughout the production process, you're going to run into problems. Like, for example, we ran into some problems with Android where we found out, we were building towards PC this whole time, and we're going to switch it to Android later, and we realized that the Android didn't support a certain plugin that we were using, so we had to figure out an entirely new way to do that. And if we had made a build earlier, we would have known that was going to be an issue. Lastly, log bugs. I tend to have basically a final sort of like post-production stage where we squash all the bugs at once instead of dealing, if they're not game breaking, if they're not preventing you from testing anything, it's okay to leave a couple of bugs to the very end so you can get them all done at the same time. And then, lastly, in pre-production is optimization. It's super important VR, and I'll get into a little bit more about optimization later in the presentation, but basically making sure that, your programmers are optimizing their code, they're not making, really bad calls, or you know what I mean. And then with the artist side of things, making sure that all the materials are, efficiently being called, all of that, exactly. And then, so the development gotchas, this is a lot of stuff that I personally learned throughout working in VR and working in games in general. Writing postmortems is very important. You're going to do a lot of projects. After those projects, you want to figure out, what did I do wrong? What did I do right? Write that stuff down. That's exactly what a postmortem is, just a document in which you write down what you remember that you did right, what you did wrong. So if you go forward and you work on other projects, you have those things to think about and to keep in mind, and you can look back on and reflect on them while you're working. Ensuring your timelines are manageable, right? So if a client comes up to you and he's like, hey, listen, I need GTA for VR made, but we got 2 months, right? You don't take that contract. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do that, right? AAA companies are not going to be able to do that. So that's obviously a very, outrageous example, but essentially just understand what you're able to do in the time that you're given. Managing scope, very similar thing. Like throughout the project, there's been many moments. Throughout our projects, there's been many moments where I've had to kind of crush some dreams, where someone comes up to me and is like, hey, listen, I think it'd be really cool if we did, A, B, C things, and we're behind on X, Y, Z things, so we don't really have the time to be able to afford to add anything new, right? So I've had to say, no, we can't do it. It's not possible for us to do that in the time frame that we're given. So just making sure that you're managing that. And it's great to put in all these really cool things, but you're always going to think of new cool things. Those ideas will never stop coming, right? So next sort of thing is understanding your hardware and software. So if you are given a project, knowing what hardware is good to use, what software is good to use, right? So if you have a project that they're like, we want to have this project shown to many people, and we don't want wires, or it doesn't really need to be that crazy with graphics or anything. We just want to show it to a bunch of people. What we usually do is we use the Oculus Quest because it's very easy to set up, to show people how to use. There's not really much wires involved. You don't need a computer, right? So that's how we know our hardware. We know that specific hardware is great for us, right? But if they were to come up to you and be like, hey, we want to make this super hyper realistic simulation with amazing materials and amazing models, right? You're not going to want to use the Oculus Quest, because the Oculus Quest is it's got a graphics card from a smartphone from 5 years ago. So you're not going to be able to have all that show up on your Oculus Quest. So what we tend to do is we use we'll use the PC, and then knowing our software, we'll use Unreal Engine, because Unreal makes it really easy to make things look photorealistic and look really good. So just understanding sort of that side of things is also very important. Like developing is a lot easier once you know those things, once you know, sort of medium that you're in, right? Here's another tip for the programmers is don't script if you don't have to. Basically, what I mean by this is all over the internet, there's VR toolkits, there's documentation, there's, even Oculus and Steam, they have VR like APIs and SDKs that have a lot of the stuff that you're going to want to use. So you're not going to need to script for that, right? If you have additional functionality that you're going to need to do, you're going to need to script for that. But for the most part, they have like teleporting, UI, interaction, stuff like that is already done for you. You're not going to need to really do that from the ground up once you're sort of like working, in the field. And just knowing where to look for that is also very important. And that's why the next point, read the documentation. The documentation is going to tell you where to find that stuff, right? Documentation is super important. It's like anytime I download a new plugin or I'm looking at a new function, like I always read the documentation. I don't just assume, right? And I know a lot of the programs here are probably like, yeah, I also do that, that's fine. But just making sure that you actually are doing that is very important. And just knowing that if you do miss something, just go back, read the documentation again, it's fine, right? And then kind of lastly, optimization. Not lastly, but optimization is super, super, super important in VR. It's like, I can't hammer this on enough, right? On a PC, right, if you're playing, a PC game like Call of Duty, for example, everything is rendered on one screen with one camera. And it's very easy it's not very easy, but it's a lot easier for the PC to handle. But in VR, you're essentially rendering two HD cameras, one for each eye. So you're doubling the amount of rendering power that you need. So because of that, optimization is super important, especially if you're doing hyper-realistic simulations. You need to make sure that you're limiting draw calls, that you're limiting, the materials that you're using. You're limiting the amount of loops that you're using in programming, right? You want to make sure that you're really, really optimizing. There's a lot of stuff that we do. We do this thing called atlasing, which is essentially we use one material for a bunch of different objects, like all of our static objects in a scene, right? Every single environment piece that isn't moving is all using the same material with different UVs. So I don't know if you guys have any idea what any of that means, like with the UVs and stuff, but if you guys have questions about that, let me know. But yeah, making sure that you're optimizing is very, very important in VR. If you don't, you're going to have a hard time. And lastly, this is more in terms of like designing things. VR is not real life, so when you're designing, remember that. Don't think about VR as if you're walking through space in real life. It's not the same, right? I actually, unfortunately, GIFs don't work in here. This guy falls into the wall. It was really funny, but it didn't work. I'm sorry, guys, it didn't work. But yeah, so basically with the interaction. With interaction, remember that you don't have like full control over your fingers or anything, right? You have a button. Like I got this button that allows me to grab things, right? That's your form of interaction. That's all you have, right? So remembering that's how you have to do things. So you can't do things like, like play a harp, for example. It's going to be very hard to do. You need to use all your fingers, right? But yeah, so also adding things like haptic feedback, like vibration, letting the users know that they are doing something. Like if you have like some sort of tablet, maybe adding vibration would be good. Understanding your user base as well is very important. Like if you know that the people that are going to be using your product are pretty VR, capable, they've been in VR for quite a while, they know everything about VR, then you're a little bit safer. But if you're making things for kids, you're going to need to explain a bit more. And the safest thing to do with understanding your audience is just assume none of them know anything. Just assume they've never been in VR before, and you're usually safe. So that brings me to this slide here. We worked on a game called VR Cats. took us a month to make. We made it for the Oculus Quest. Essentially, all it was an escape room. So we have a couple of reviews here that we're totally not salty about. But basically, the first one is from WolfGamer236, and his says, "Was a great game, just wish the puzzles were a bit more challenging and the game was a bit longer." So we had no problem with it. It was very easy to him. He went through it very quickly, no issues, right? But then we got VR Gamers with a Z, gave us a 1 out of 5, and says, "Yeah, I have a lot of bugs. I went through the walls and I'm blocked from the start with the switches, and the only answer that the developer gives is the one in the game. Concerning myself, I move on to something else. We go from a too simple enigma to something too complex from the start. I may have looked everywhere. Each photo, I do not see colors. Too bad. There are many other games that does things better." So basically, there's a huge discrepancy there. Obviously, one person had a really easy time in the simulation, and the other person had a terrible time, didn't know what was going on. And basically, just assume that all the people that are going to be using your product is VR gamers here. That has no idea how to use VR, no idea what he's doing. Just assume that that you need to explain everything, and that's you'll be safe. And with that, we can move on to some questions.
This picture here, this is our lead technical designer, and just this is a comment that he made when we were at CES earlier this year. The future is looking bright, and just all you guys being in this VR class, we're so excited about the technology, and just seeing you guys in this class makes me think the future is looking bright for you guys too. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much,
guys, for taking some time to share these insights. I think it was really valuable and echoes a lot of stuff that we're trying to teach, but it's great to come from industry so that it's kind of validated that, yeah, optimization is important, things like that. So again, thank you so much for your time. Now, there is some time for question and answer, and I did have them kind of come up with some questions beforehand. Unfortunately, off this is kind of being weird, where I don't have the ability to give everybody megaphone access. So if you do have a question, just so Josh and Evan can hear it, why don't you come closer to the stage so that they can hear that.
Don't be shy, guys. So, yeah.
Just go ahead and ask a question if you do have one.
What has been your favorite game or product that you've made so far?
Sorry, you cut out at the start there.
Oh, sorry. What has been your favorite game or product that you've made so far?
Do you have a favorite, Evan?
I was quite a big fan of VR Cat when we made that. It was kind of just like a fun project that we got to do to test out the Oculus Quest hardware and try and push some of our limits. And it was just really cool. Like, almost all of our projects have been client-based, so we're just giving it to the client and then they use it how they do, and we might get some feedback, but not too much. And so this one, getting to actually see, I think it's now 2,000 or 3,000 people have downloaded the game, and we haven't promoted it at all. So it was just kind of cool to see all those people trying it out and getting reviews back and seeing that interaction with actual people.
Yeah. Me personally, my favorite game that I worked on actually was not with XpertVR, but when I was in third year at Brock University, I was in the game programming stream. We made a game called Bad Manners. We went to level up with it. We actually won level, which was really cool. But basically what the game was is you had two people playing as teenagers going through a haunted house, and two people playing as ghosts that can possess the items in the house. And the ghosts would then try to sabotage the teenagers and try to kill those teenagers, while the teenagers are trying to get gold and loot from the house and trying to get out, right? So that was my favorite game that I've worked on. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I had a question if I can ask.
Go for
For
it,
sure.
Cass.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned you can't give some people microphone access, but you could just give us the actual microphone, and that might work.
True.
But
Oh,
VR. Okay, so
yeah.
I saw some of your guys' products before the presentation started, and the one with I think it was a heat map being generated as you went through a store and looked at things was really cool to me. And
Yeah.
it made me wonder about how what's it called? I think that's in-store customer tracking. Oh, where did my microphone go? Oh, yeah.
It's
Anyway,
lost forever.
wonderful. Anyway, so that made me wonder why you guys chose to do VR for that sort of thing when there's conventional methods that are already around. Like doing it in VR requires you to make the store virtually, where normally I think companies just use like facial recognition or Wi-Fi or app tracking to follow customers in their stores in the real world anyway, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So
Mhm.
definitely the facial tracking is newer and is a good way of tracking people in store. But most brands and retailers, they'll buy up a whole warehouse and build a replica of one of their stores in a warehouse, or they'll close a store for a day or a week, and they'll have consumers go through there. So we were consulting a few market research companies on how to be innovative back in 2018, I think, and seeing how they do that research today, and it costed $50 to $100,000 for each research study. So, like one of our customers, they are one of the market research companies that we were working with. They were working with a cereal brand, and it was like over $50,000 just to like test if the label on this cereal box was going to perform well in stores. And we looked at this, and obviously, right when we did it, we were doing custom simulations, so we're like, we could bring this down like a few dollars, but obviously, like you're saying, we still have to create that whole store, so still super expensive. But as we've built out all these tools and 3D assets for these stores, we actually now have created a product that these researchers can use it for just a couple $1,000s to pay participants to go through, and basically do all the work by themselves or not have to do any work. So yeah, just seeing, I guess to answer your summarize, seeing how expensive it was for traditional research in those warehouses and shutting down stores, and seeing how we could build that in virtual reality and very quickly rearrange stores and rearrange where products were.
Oh, I didn't know they went and remade a whole thing like that. That's crazy, and it actually
Yes,
makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
yeah, for sure.
So I've got a question from one of our students, Rianne, and her microphone isn't working. So the question that she asked is, has COVID changed what your views or expectations of VR will be in the next 5 years?
That's a good question. Want to go first, Joe?
Well, my thoughts is that it's definitely growing significantly because of it. People have definitely been like looking at VR as a way to sort of stay active in their own homes. So I think it's definitely a good way to, a lot of those like rhythm games like Beat Saber, stuff like that. You might see a boom in like VR fitness games, maybe. I don't know, but I definitely see that people are trying any way that they can to sort of get out of their own homes, and VR is a great way to do that.
Yeah, and then on top of that, we've been working with a lot of academic institutions and just seeing how they're conducting research and conducting classes has changed a lot. So, for example, right now we're working with the college to create a crime scene investigation program in virtual reality. So you would, as somebody training to be a police officer, you go into the environment and you have to solve a crime, and you get tested on it at the end, a bunch of things. So those types of applications, like even before COVID, you couldn't really do that type of learning and have that type of hands-on learning. So I think that COVID's really accelerating the education side of VR, as well as with people meeting through Zoom and different platforms like that, like being able to meet like this in alt space and have a full conversation and see everybody's avatars is definitely huge as well. So in that education side, but also on the meeting side, I think COVID has really accelerated the adoption of VR and AR in those cases.
What sort of tech or like new programs coming out that you're most looking forward to or excited to in your business?
Quest 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was definitely a big one. Unreal Engine 5, that's another thing that's coming out pretty soon. I don't know if it's pretty soon, but I know that's
Yeah,
definitely in the
about
works. That's exciting. Anything
yeah,
that
like
you can think of?
Quest 2 is definitely what I'm most excited about right now. I pre-ordered one as soon as it was announced. I'm excited to get my hands on one in a couple of weeks and try that out. Just because the Quest 1 was so revolutionary for us. Then on top of that, like on the way like higher end side of things, there's a company called Varjo out of Finland. It's VARJO, and we're a reseller for them. And they build headsets that are like the highest end VR headsets on the market, and they're augmented reality headset instead of using using the screen door, or not screen door, projecting like hologram kind of thing in front of you in the way that the HoloLens and Magic Leap does. It uses video pass-through, so it has two 4K cameras on front of the headset, takes in the video, and then overlays 3D models like you would in VFX and films. And they've been growing a lot. They're working with NASA now, and we've been introducing a lot of our clients to their headsets and seeing that technology and talking to the CEO and learning about where he sees the technology go in the next 5 years. He thinks that their headset can get to the point that the Quest 2 is at within the next 5 years. So hearing that and seeing how amazing that technology is gets me really excited as well.
Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, my computer's being a little bit wonky right now, so I might have to hop out. So I just would encourage, if you have some questions, to keep asking Evan and Josh, and hopefully I'll get back in a moment here. Sorry about that.
No worries.
My hands have stopped working, but I'm still here. Battery's dead. Any other questions?
I think I hear someone talking, but I can't hear him anymore.
Yeah, was somebody trying to say something? I thought I heard something as well. I guess a question for you guys then, as we wait for Mike to come back in, like, how are you guys liking this program so far? I saw it a year ago or so and thought it was really interesting to completely focus on the VR and AR. How's it been going so far, your first month in?
It's been great. Awesome.
What do you guys been learning so far?
We've got a few courses, which are game engine coding one for Unity. There's one about immersive audio design in VR. We have another one that goes over just VR in general, which is the one we're in right now for this presentation.
Okay.
And a 3D modeling one this semester. And did I miss any other ones we have?
I think you got them all. Besides did you get the picture one or the
photography and
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah, we have,
photogrammetry stuff? Or?
Yeah, photogrammetry. We actually
Nice.
just got our first photogrammetry assignment the other day.
And what software are you guys using for that? Like we've kind of looked into photogrammetry, but haven't touched on it much.
You might have to ask Mike, but I think we're using Zephyr. We just took all the photos for our stuff so far, and then I think next class we actually do get to put it in whatever the software it is.
Nice.
That's gonna be super cool. We actually used, I think, was it photogrammetry for the LCBO?
I was laser scanning.
That
So
was a different thing. Laser
yeah,
scanning.
that's similar.
Okay. Yeah, basically we went to an LCBO before it opened. Put these crazy expensive cameras in there, and was able to 3D scan almost the entire thing. And what we did is we used that. Unfortunately, the 3D model wasn't great, so we actually ended up just using it as like a really good white box, and just modeled everything after it. But yeah, that's the LCBO that if you have looked at our site, that's the LCBO that you see on there. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I did have another one, but I don't know if I'm allowed to ask more than one. I was kind of waiting till the end. But
Go ahead.
with your data collection type stuff, are you guys ever worried about the what's it called, the Hawthorne effect when you do data collection in VR, where where basically when someone's aware they're being observed, their behavior changes, which could influence data? And is that more of a concern when you have someone actually putting on a VR headset and going into a virtual world, or not really?
It's something that we thought about for sure. I guess the way we look at it is that when the research that we're normally doing, researchers would have already been observing them in different areas and lots of the time less realistic spaces. So it's like, if there is that effect in the VR world, then it's still going to be lesser than it would have been before. But on that, we've definitely been reading into a lot of studies showing how VR and real world learning or real world research compares, and we're planning to do a few studies ourselves to prove that our simulations can get the same results that you would get in the real world, or better results. So yeah, definitely something we've thought about, but because a lot of research is already done with that in mind, as to an issue. Good point.
Yeah, and another thing with the research side of things, the way that we are currently working with it is that we send our research programs, our research sort of like applications, we send them out through the internet. So the way that it does collect data, there's no one there like with them as they would be in a normal research environment, right? So they are aware that there's like the stuff that they're doing is being observed and collected, but it's a lot easier for them. I feel like it's a lot easier for someone in VR to lose sight of that while they're going through it, right? Compared to if they were being specifically watched, like with a pen, someone with a pen and pad writing down everything they're doing. So I think that's sort of, I guess at least in my eyes, the way that I kind of justify it, the way that I sort of think about it. Yeah.
So I got another question from one of our students, Cody. So the question is, do you think that the lack of modular headsets and some sort of uniformity in the industry could be hurting the industry at all?
Yeah, like I think definitely the uniformity is hurting on the developer side. Josh can definitely talk to it more, but just through reading through all kinds of different chats and Discord and subreddits and just groups that I'm a part of, it's definitely an issue when you're especially if you're developing for a PC headset, and then you also want to have it on standalone headsets. But even just going between an Oculus Rift S and an HTC Vive Pro or something, pretty similar type headsets, especially with Oculus, they don't follow all the same guidelines and have, like even with OpenXR and those SDKs available, they're not all the parameters are the same. So definitely hinders people when they're trying to build an application and they have to choose which platform they're going to be building it for. And yeah, on the modular side, I think it has been hindering the industry that there isn't as many modular headsets like the Oculus Quest, but I also understand that like we're at early stages of VR, so getting like the Oculus Quest was really a big revolution just for everybody in the industry. So I understand why it's taken so long, and it's good now to see HTC has their Focus and is rumored to be releasing the Focus 2 soon, which should be a lot better than the first one. As well as Pico is a company out of China that has some really good standalone headsets, like one that's even comparable to the Quest 2 almost. So there's more coming out, and I think that's just a problem that will take a year or two to resolve itself.
You know, I don't really see it as being necessarily a problem. I think it's exciting. If it was uniform, that means that we've kind of reached a level where everything's kind of a standard, right? At this point, yeah, it is very early in the stages of virtual reality. So having people, creating new things and experimenting is something we want to see, right? You want to have all of these people doing new things, because if you don't have that, then you're stuck, right? You're at one place and everyone's okay with that. So the fact that we have so many different things, it's very reminiscent of the early stages of video games, right? When there were tons of different consoles and nothing was really, there were obviously the better ones, but nothing was standard just yet, right? So yeah, I think it's exciting. It's exciting. Non-uniformity is definitely an exciting part of it.
So I have a question. It's kind of one related to what we're trying to look at doing at the college here. So we're looking at some applied research with virtuality in the areas of training. That's the biggest area right now, is in training. But I'm wondering, do you see, or like with assessments, like in the traditional kind of world, whether it's in the real world, there's best practices for curriculum design and assessment design and those kind of things. Do you see some similar best practices being developed for VR, or can you see it go one-to-one? If it worked in real world, you can assess in the virtual world. I don't know if my question is making sense.
Oh yeah. Like I think a lot of the things in the real world, the crime scene investigation that we're doing now, it's, I would say, pretty reminiscent of a real world simulation. Like you have to, as you're in the crime scene, you have to take a bunch of pictures and you have to do a bunch of certain interactions and find clues, and then it sends all that information to your teacher when you do the exam, and they can look through all the information that you collected and make sure that you collected everything properly. So I would say it's pretty similar to the real world in that sense of grading. But we've seen a lot of good practices with bigger businesses and people training at like NASA or Boeing, for example, using eye tracking. And eye tracking's so huge for multiple reasons. If you can afford to have it in your headset or in your simulation, because you can track obviously where people are looking, so to make sure that they're, when they're entering a room, they're noticing all of the safety precaution signs and things along those lines, and lots of stuff around eye tracking. But then also have seen a lot of work around looking at pupils and looking at pupil dilation. You can actually tell how stressed somebody is or how confident they are by how their pupil is dilated. And as a trainer or as an educator, that allows you to know if somebody is actually ready to go out into the real world, and how they're reacting at different parts of a training exercise, so you know which parts you need to reteach or to train more in. So yeah, I would say the eye tracking is the biggest thing that I've seen so far that's kind of well-known, good add-on in VR for training.
Awesome. Before we wrap up, any last questions that the group would like to ask either Evan or Josh or both? If you do, just go ahead and speak up.
What is the most difficult part of development? Like, is it I guess like the whole list of things, like is it communicating with the client, that kind of stuff?
So when you say difficult, what do you mean? Do you mean like, I guess like the traditional form of difficult, or like something that I don't like the most? You know what I mean? Like the one that's the less fun? Because I can give you my least enjoyable is definitely pre-production. Basically, that's a lot of documents and a lot of writing and a lot of figuring out how things are going and designing it, right? Production is definitely the most fun because you make all that come to life, right? But Pre-production is definitely the most difficult, and it's the most important as well, because production heavily depends on making sure that, you know, everything is sort of laid out very clearly. So in terms of like difficulty with like programming, it's really just, you know, whenever there's something new, learning that and making sure that it works is also, you know, another difficult aspect. That's something you're going to be doing a lot in VR. Is you're going to be doing a lot of learning and a lot of using new things, because nothing, like I said, you know, because nothing is a standard right now, you're always going to be using new things, and that's okay, right? It's fun, I promise.
Right. Well,
Anything else?
I think I see a hand up. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you work with inventors? Sorry, Colin. Like inventors? Do you work with inventors?
Like inventors of hardware, or
Yeah, for like VR and AR?
yeah, so like we've been working with a lot of hardware manufacturers, so like not really directly the inventor, but like people like HTC and Vario and Oculus and Pico. We work alongside their team. Beyond that, we have been talking to a lot of smaller companies for like accessories. So, for example, last week we had a call with a heart rate monitoring company, and they do a bunch of other stuff too, but it's like a device that you put on and can monitor heart rate and some other analytics, and that would add to our simulation. So we're always looking into new accessories and seeing what inventors are out there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Last call for questions. This has been a really great session. I want to just again personally thank you, Josh and Evan. Sorry, I'm not in my VR headset because my laptop's being weird, so I can't give you thumbs up or whatnot, but I can give you some emojis. So again, thank you so much for all of your time preparing and in sharing some insights. Hopefully the students find some value in this. I know I did, and I do appreciate your time. And hopefully we'll have a chance to collaborate or to share going forward here. I think what you're doing is amazing, and there's a lot of synergy with what we want to accomplish, both on the academic side and within our research side.
Amazing, yeah. Well, thank you for having us. I will give off some emojis as well, with both my hands have stopped working. But
I'll give it for you. There you go.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This is great, and it's just great to see that there's programs popping up like this. That like Josh went through the games program, which was amazing, but it's so cool to see VR specific programs as well. And yeah, would love to continue this conversation as well afterwards about some collaborative ideas as well.
Awesome. And before you guys go, could I get everybody to come in front of the stage here? I want to do a quick photo. I know you can't go on the stage because of the stage blocker, but we're going to do a quick photo here. I'm just going to go up here.
Did you just disable the blocker?
No. Wait, actually, I might be able to. Let me see. Oh, yeah, I can. I can disable it. So you guys should be able to go up on the stage.
Everyone up here. Group hug.
All right, I'm just going to actually do it from the flying person here, so give me 1 sec. And actually, I can go in it now. Give me 1 sec. Sorry, guys. Ty must have stepped away because his avatar's not moving.
I think he's asleep.
Maybe. All right, here we go, guys. Perfect. Thanks so much again, and yeah, it was great. And have a great rest of your week, Evan and Josh, and look forward to seeing the cool stuff you guys will continue to work on.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, have a great rest of the week, and everyone else as well. And, yeah, looking forward to seeing what you guys up to.
Perfect. And when I get this video processed, I'll share the link with you.
Perfect.
Right.
Awesome.
See you all later.
Oh yeah, and feel free to reach out anywhere else, like on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. You can find both